Open a man up emotionally using this technique. We're going to dive into this today. You know, it seems to me if you're in the dating marketplace, getting to know someone and connecting at a very intimate level almost requires ninja level skills. Let me repeat that, almost requires ninja level skills. Given how many relationships fail and how many videos there are out there right now centered on heartbreak and overcoming heartbreak, I think it's time to reverse engineer the getting to know you process, which has traditionally been centered around entertainment of one another. It's been centered around romance. It's been centered around attraction versus compatibility and intentionality. Let me repeat that: compatibility and intentionality. So, what I'm about to share is something I've been radically criticized for. And I want to dive into this because in several videos, I've mentioned that the dating process should be an interrogation. An interrogation. Now, while I say that tongue in cheek, because most people would just say, go out on a first date and just treat it like having coffee with a total stranger. Make it very light, very fluffy, very benign. Okay. Now, here's my belief system. If two people have connected, most likely through a dating site, and roughly 65% of couples who are engaging today in a relationship have met through a dating site, then there's an actual purpose for getting together. This isn't just some casual coffee conversation with somebody you met at the coffee shop. There's a level of intentionality if you're approaching the process of getting to know someone. And the reason why I share interrogation, because when I share with you the deep understanding of what I mean, you might view this in a completely different way. And again, I say it tongue in cheek, but as I started this conversation, we almost need ninja level relationship skills to actually enter into a relationship. Now, for those of you that have done personal development and therapy, let me repeat that: personal development and therapy. And I'm talking about a deep dive into personal development, self-help, spiritual work, or therapy. Then you've already built some muscles, understanding your feelings, expressing your feelings, asking for your needs to be met. Let me repeat that: asking for your needs to be met. But this is, believe it or not, a very small percentage of the population in the dating marketplace even have these level of skills to actually lean into deeper emotional connection with another human being. Now, I've always said the dating process should be like two attorneys deciding to start a law practice together. It's a mutual exchange together. It's not the man is the leader of the relationship and he's supposed to climb to the highest room of the tallest tower and he's just supposed to entertain you, because that's what our traditional expectation has been, centered around romance. But when two attorneys together, they're not romancing each other. They're not taking each other out to dinner. They're asking each other some deep, radically honest questions to determine if it makes sense to explore a partnership together. Let me repeat that. They're asking deep, intentional questions to explore if it makes sense to investigate whether or not it makes sense to explore a partnership. Now, I get that on a first date, you're probably not looking at it from that perspective, and that's okay. First dates is partially about building a little bit rapport. But the fact of the matter is, folks, the minute you engage emotionally with another person, even on one date, you can get a little bit attached to a person. And if you're acting very benign, very surface level, imagine going out on several dates with someone. And again, it's very surface, very benign, it's very fun. It's about entertaining one another. Guess what? In 3 or 4 dates or 5 or 6 dates, you can actually begin to have feelings for someone. And it is so disappointing when you begin to have feelings for someone and you find out you're misaligned on so many core things in your life. You're misaligned on your values. You're misaligned on your lifestyle compatibility. And as I said earlier, we almost need ninja level skills. We need a high emotional IQ and relationship skills to actually make a relationship work. And sadly, the more wounded a person is in their past experiences, the harder it is for them to lean into a relationship. And this is why interrogation skills might be the answer. This is the technique I'm about to share with you. All right, so give me a minute to set this up for you. I have a very dear friend whose father was a police detective. And we're talking high-level police detective. I mean, he's worked on murder cases, he's worked on drug cases, and I've had an opportunity. And his son is radically adept to all of detective techniques in interrogation. Now, please just bear with me for a second. I know the word interrogation is a radical turnoff, but you might see it in a different light in a few moments. So as I started to do my research on this, one of the first things that came up, interrogation requires or interrogating someone effectively requires a combination of psychological, communication, analytical skills, a combination of those, okay? Psychological, communication, and analytical skills. So one of the first skills is communication skills. And within communication skills, and this is something that we all need if we want to get to know another human being, if we want to get them to open up emotionally, we need to learn the skill of active listening, paying attention to verbal and nonverbal cues. Actually paying attention. Do you know most people communicate with the intent to respond? They're focused on what they're going to say instead of what they're actually listening to. So within interrogation techniques, this is one of the fundamental skills, is learning active listening. Now, those of you, I meant to mention this before, but if you haven't read the book, I Hear You by Michael Sorensen, The Surprisingly Simple Skills Behind Extraordinary Relationships. This talks about much of what I'm about to share in this video, and one of them represents active listening skills. And by the way, all the books I recommend are listed below in Jonathon Recommend Books. Now, one of the second skills within communication is clear questioning, asking open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Because if you want to get to know someone, you have to go beyond the surface. But Jonathon, I'm just told that in the dating process, I should just say, how's your day going? Did you have a good day? I hope you had a good day. And it's all based on text message, because text message is so much easier to find out all you need to know about a person. And if all we do is ask them about their day, we are going to have a clear picture about this human being. You know, it fascinates me how few people ask value-based questions. And in today's dating marketplace, there are two questions that will give you clear insight into a person's values when you ask them about their political point of view and their religious point of view. Those are two really important questions you may want to find out about a person. Because I got to tell you today, if somebody is radically conservative and they're with somebody who's radically progressive, I guarantee you there's not going to be a second date. So you might even want to ask some of these questions in your interrogation skills, these clear questioning, even before you go on a first date with someone. Now, here in the United States, most people are moderate, so it's not going to be much of a challenge in those areas. But you know what? It might make sense to ask these sooner rather than later. Instead of just treating it as someone casually you're meeting for coffee, I'm here to encourage some level of intentionality. Now, within communication, it requires emotional intelligence, recognizing and responding to someone's emotions. Do you know, empathy is a skill that we must learn. We're not just divinely, taught to be empathetic, to be emotionally intelligent. It requires doing some deep dives in the nooks and crannies that causes emotional pain in our lives to be able to have the capacity to actually look at someone else from an empathetic, from an emotionally intentional place. And so as you start to investigate these interrogation techniques, you'll start to see that it's a human technique. It's a human getting to know you technique. And again, for those that have criticized me for being, I've been radically criticized for using the term interrogation. But as you listen to it, it makes sense as a skill, as an emotional skill, as a relationship skill to actually effectively get to know someone. Now, another skill is psychological skills. Psychological skills. One of the fundamentals in in psychological skills is building rapport with another person, gaining some level of connection. This is where you ask those questions, those me too questions. Do you like sushi? Yeah, me too. Do you like pickleball? Oh my God, I love it. Do you like the Rolling Stones? Oh, I've seen them in concert 5 times. Building rapport with someone starts with where you have similarities with another person. And this is kind of the foundational piece in the early stage of dating, is to find out where you have your me too's, where you are similar. And certainly when there's differences, you have to recognize, as I shared before, in that value-based difference, you have to see if there's common ground. Because sadly, at least here in the United States, we have a very closed-minded population for a lot of human beings. It seems like open-mindedness has gone by the wayside. We have a lot of closed-minded perspectives out there when it comes to people's values and perception. So this is why, building a little rapport and then asking those deeper questions would actually generate and yield more of a connection at an emotional level. To get someone to open up. Hey, it's 11:11. All right, reading body language. This is something that I think is a skill that very few human beings have, but to actually listen, look at body language. Now, many of you have criticized when I close my arms, when I do this, that there's a reflection of being closed off. Now, I'd be candid with you. Sometimes I just don't know what to do with my arms. And I do that because I need a place to put them. But certainly you can see a person's body language, if they're like this, if they're closed off, if actually you began sharing something personal and you feel them kind of pulling away emotionally. You can even feel it on an energetic level if you start to pay attention. Because again, this requires ninja level skills that most human beings haven't developed. And it's one of the reasons why we look at 50% of marriages fail and 65 and 75% of second and third marriages fail, because you didn't really get to know the other person at a deep heart-centered level. Now, one of the other psychological techniques in building rapport is persuasion and influence. And certainly there's a level of that where we want to encourage what we're happy about, what makes us joyful, and to somehow persuade and convince a person about that. That's just kind of a natural inclination for all of us. But within that, it requires some level of patience and control, to actually coming back to that active listening and not react and be neutral when there's a discrepancy, when there's a difference, when there's an ick moment. Instead of running away from those ick moments, I'm inviting everyone to be a little bit patient, to recognize that we are fallible human beings. I'm sorry, we are riddled with insecurities and flaws. All of us have. One of the core wounds most humans have in the dating marketplace is, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not likable. This competence, confidence that is so attractive in the dating marketplace. Quite frankly, most human beings on the inside are projecting a mask of who they are. And if you want to get to know someone emotionally, then it requires digging beyond the surface. Now, within interrogation techniques is analytical and critical thinking skills. This includes pattern recognition, fact checking, and verification. Let's dive into fact checking and verification. It's interesting how, and I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I've been on first dates with someone where a person has contradicted themselves several times in the conversation. This one stands out, but I knew something was off. In other words, there was a contradiction in something they said. And I decided to actually do a reverse Google phone number on the person. And I realized that some of the things that they said was in contradiction to what I've learned on Google. So it requires this level of skill before we open our heart to another human being, is fact check, because quite frankly, the truth of the matter is, We can take someone on face value, but nowadays there's enough out there in the internet universe where we can fact check a person's life to some degree by doing a little bit of homework in their social media page and actually Googling someone as well. There's another technique that's tactical, and that requires understanding human behavior. This is where I'm coming back before when I talked about personal development, self-help, spiritual work. If you haven't read my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? A Journey of Personal Development, Self-Help, Spiritual Work, there's a link below to get a copy of my book. I'm here in the back chapters are all the recommended readings that I have that you may want to, and it's 2 pages, to actually begin to understand human behavior. And if you haven't read the book, the Hoffman process, this is a deep dive into healing your own childhood wounds and adult traumas that cause negative patterns, limiting beliefs in your life. And when you understand your own behavior, it actually helps prepare you to get to know another human being. It's kind of scary putting yourself out there to be vulnerable, to be authentic, to be transparent. It is scary. But the truth of the matter is, folks, we can't open up emotionally if we don't build a level of trust and emotional safety. So these techniques I've talked about, I know it sounds ominous and it's unattractive and you should never interview someone. But as you start to read what these, and I've got it posted here, when you start reading the skills behind it, you recognize that this is actually a more effective way to get to know another human being instead of the traditional based on chemistry, based on romance, based on looks, based on entertainment that, yeah, it gets us into the bedroom, it gets us companionship, connection, and sex. But sadly, in many cases, it's with a person who's actually not compatible with you or not even capable of opening up emotionally. And let me tell you something, when 2 people who have done therapy in their life get together, do you know what? People have done therapy, they've done personal development, self-help, and spiritual work. And when they've both done it, they actually are able to open up. They have all of these skills because these are skills that you will learn when you've done this type of work for yourself. And again, I know it sounded like a turnoff when I shared it in a video recently. And again, I say it tongue in cheek, but what's really behind it is learning the skills so that when you meet someone and you've embodied these skills, it's just like having a natural conversation with another human being. It actually becomes a natural conversation. And quite frankly, if 2 people, as I said earlier, are meeting through a dating site, there's already a purpose built in that you're supposed to be getting to know someone. And by asking some of those deeper questions, maybe their politics, maybe their religion, maybe their past relationships, are they currently in a relationship with someone? You might want to ask these sooner rather than later so you don't get attached to a person who's incapable of leaning into, as I always say, a juicy, delicious, healthy, happy relationship. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating with you? Please let me know if it is. Post a comment below. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I do my best to read them all in the first 24 hours. As always, if you find value in my videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos. And if you want to connect with me directly, there's links below to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. There's a link to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery. There's a link to get all the books I recommend. You can even get my dating vows and follow me on Instagram listed below. All right, I'm going to wrap up this video as I always do. First off, giving myself a big, gigantic Jonathon Barrick of self-love. If it's okay, I'm going to reach into the camera and give you a hug of love. Or you can give a hug to a friend, a pet, a teddy bear, a pillow, because hugs are a great source of love. And let's face it, we could all use more love in our lives. Thanks a bunch. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.